Sarah Bennett's hands shook as she crumpled the letter, tears freezing on her cheeks in the bitter Montana wind. The train had left an hour ago. The platform stood empty. No one had come. Again. She pressed her fist against her mouth, trying to swallow the sob clawing up her throat, when small footsteps crunched through the snow behind her. A child's voice, clear as a bell. "Miss, why are you crying? Did somebody hurt you?" Before we begin, if stories of second chances and found families touch your heart, subscribe to Wild West Love Stories. Stay until the end to see how Sarah's journey unfolds, and comment below with your city so we can see how far this story travels across the world. Sweetwater Valley, Montana Territory, October 28, 1883. The snow had started at dawn. Small flakes that grew heavier as the morning stretched into afternoon. By the time the 2:15 train pulled into Sweetwater Station, the world had turned white and silent, muffling even the sound of Sarah's breaking heart. She stood on the platform alone. Her carpet bag sat at her feet, packed with everything she owned. 3 dresses, a shawl, her mother had woven a small Bible from the orphanage, and the letters. Always the letters. Promises written in careful script by men who'd sworn they wanted a wife, needed a partner, would build a life together. Until they learned the truth. Sarah pulled the latest letter from her coat pocket. The paper had gone soft from being read too many times, folded and unfolded, until the creases threatened to tear. "Dear Miss Bennett, I have a home ready and waiting, a good life to offer. Come to Sweetwater, and we'll begin again together. Yours in anticipation, Thomas Whitmore." She'd memorized every word during the 3-day train journey, had imagined his face, his voice, the home he'd described, had let herself hope one more foolish time. But Thomas Whitmore hadn't come. No wagon waited, no man called her name, only emptiness and the falling snow. From across the street, 2 young ranch hands leaned against the saloon wall watching. One elbowed the other, grinning. "That her?" the taller one said. "Yep. The half-breed mail order. Whitmore changed his mind this morning when Henderson told him about her mama. Smart man." Sarah heard every word. The wind carried voices well across empty spaces. She sat down on the wooden bench, its surface slick with ice, and let her head drop. The humiliation burned worse than the cold. 4 years. 4 engagements. 4 rejections. The first man had been kind about it, at least. Had written a letter explaining that his family wouldn't accept a woman of mixed blood into their home. The second had simply disappeared, leaving her standing in a church with 40 witnesses watching her shame. The third had married her, actually stood at the altar, and said the vows, then left that same night, taking the ring with him. "I can't lie beside a woman with savage blood," he'd said. "It ain't natural." And now Thomas Whitmore, who hadn't even bothered to show his face. Sarah's shoulders began to shake. She'd promised herself she wouldn't cry. Not again. Not in public, where people could see, could whisper, could confirm what they already believed, that she was weak, broken, less than whole. But the tears came anyway, hot against her frozen cheeks. She didn't hear the small footsteps at first. The snow muffled everything. "Miss..." Sarah looked up. A little girl stood 3 feet away, bundled in a coat too large for her small frame. Dark eyes studied Sarah with solemn concern. She couldn't have been more than 4 years old, with black hair peeking from beneath a knitted cap and skin the color of warm honey. "Miss, why are you crying?" Sarah wiped at her face quickly, trying to compose herself. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just cold." "You're sad." The child stepped closer. "I can tell. Did somebody hurt you?" "No, nobody hurt me." "Then why are the tears?" Sarah's throat tightened. Something about the directness of the question, the genuine worry in those young eyes, cracked something open inside her. "Sometimes people just don't want you," Sarah whispered. "And that hurts worse than anything else." The little girl tilted her head, considering this. "My mama died. People said Papa should give me away because I look like her. He said no." Sarah's breath caught. "I'm glad he did." Do you have a mama? I did, once. Do you have a papa? No. Do you have anybody? Sarah shook her head slowly. The child moved closer still, until she stood directly in front of Sarah. She reached out one small, mittened hand and placed it on Sarah's gloved fingers. Can you be my mama? She asked. I need one, and you need somebody. The world seemed to stop. Sarah stared at this child she'd never met, who'd offered something in 30 seconds that no adult had offered in 28 years: unconditional acceptance. Sweetheart, Emma. A man's voice cut across the platform. Deep, rough with use, carrying the kind of authority that came from years of giving orders and having them followed. Sarah looked up. He was tall, broad-shouldered, moving toward them with long strides that ate up the snowy ground. Dark hair showed beneath a worn hat, and his face had the weathered look of someone who'd spent most of his life outdoors. He wore simple work clothes, denim, a heavy coat, boots that had seen better years. His eyes found the child first, then shifted to Sarah. They were brown, almost black, and deeply tired. Emma, what did I tell you about wandering off? I saw the lady crying, Papa. She needs help. The man stopped a few feet away. His gaze moved from Sarah's tear-stained face to the carpet bag at her feet to the letter still clutched in her hand. Something flickered across his expression. Recognition maybe, or pity. You're the one Whitmore was supposed to meet. It wasn't a question. Sarah stood brushing snow from her skirt. Yes, I'm Sarah Bennett. Daniel Carter. He didn't remove his hat or offer his hand, just nodded once, acknowledging her existence. Whitmore's not coming. I gathered that. Found out this morning you're part Lakota. Decided it wasn't going to work. Sarah's jaw tightened. I see. Most folk around here feel the same way. Daniel's voice was flat, matter-of-fact, delivering the ugly truth without apology. You'll have a hard time finding lodging. Harder time finding work. Papa? Emma tugged at his coat. She can stay with us. Emma. Please, she doesn't have anybody. We have room. Daniel looked down at his daughter. Something soft moved across his face there, and gone so quickly Sarah almost missed it. It's not that simple. Why not? Because... He stopped, looked at Sarah again. You got anywhere else to go? Sarah lifted her chin. I'll manage. That's not what I asked. No, Sarah admitted. I don't. The wind picked up driving snow sideways across the platform. Emma shivered, pressing closer to her father's leg. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed, a sound like a man making a decision he'd probably regret. I've got a cabin about 3 miles north. Small, basic. But it's warm and there's food. He shifted his weight. You can stay the night. Get your bearings. Figure out what comes next. Sarah studied him carefully. Why would you help me? Because my daughter asked me to. Daniel reached down, lifted Emma into his arms. And because leaving somebody to freeze on a train platform ain't something I can walk away from. Papa knew what it's like, Emma said softly, her small hand touching Daniel's rough cheek. When nobody wants you. Daniel's expression closed off immediately. Get your bag. Sarah hesitated. Every instinct screamed caution. She knew nothing about this man, except that he had a kind daughter and was willing to offer shelter to a stranger. That could mean genuine charity or something far worse. But the alternative was staying here in a town where Thomas Whitmore had already spread word about her tainted blood, where the boarding house would turn her away and the saloon girls would laugh. She picked up her bag. Thank you, Mr. Carter. Don't thank me yet. He turned, heading toward a wagon hitched at the far end of the platform. You might not like what you find. They walked in silence through the falling snow. Emma nestled against her father's chest, peeking over his shoulder at Sarah with curious eyes. Sarah followed a few steps behind, watching the way Daniel moved, careful, deliberate, like a man who'd learned not to waste motion. The wagon was old, but well maintained. Daniel set Emma on the bench, then took Sarah's bag and stowed it in the back without being asked. He offered his hand to help her up. Sarah took it. His palm was calloused warm despite the cold, and he held her hand only as long as necessary before releasing it and walking around to the driver's side. "It's a rough ride," he said, gathering the reins. "Roads are bad this time of year." "I've had rougher." He glanced at her sideways. "I expect you have." They rolled out of town slowly, the wagon wheels crunching through fresh snow. Emma hummed something soft and tuneless between them. Sarah kept her hands folded in her lap, watching the landscape slide past pine trees, heavy with white distant mountains disappearing into gray sky, the occasional ranch house with smoke rising from its chimney. "Mr. Carter," she said after several minutes, "I need to know something." "What's that? Why did you really offer to help me the truth?" Daniel didn't answer right away. His hands were steady on the reins, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. Finally, "Because 14 months ago my wife died, left me alone with Emma, and I didn't know how to raise a daughter by myself. People in town said I should give her to the orphanage, said a half Apache girl needed a woman's influence, and I couldn't provide that." Sarah's breath caught. "I told them no," Daniel continued. "Told them she was mine and I'd die before I let anybody take her. But I understood what they meant. Emma needed more than I could give." He looked at Sarah, then direct and unflinching. "When I saw you on that platform, saw how those boys were treating you, I remembered how it felt to have people look at my daughter like she was less than human." "So this is pity?" "No." His voice was firm. "This is knowing what it costs to be unwanted, and choosing not to let it happen to somebody else if I can help it." Silence settled between them again. But it felt different now. Less awkward, more understanding. Emma broke it. "Are you going to stay forever?" she asked Sarah, her voice hopeful. "Emma," Daniel started. "I don't know, sweetheart," Sarah said gently. "I don't know what's going to happen next. But you'll stay tonight." "Yes, tonight." "Good." Emma smiled, a bright, unguarded thing that made Sarah's chest ache. "I can show you my rocks. I collect pretty ones." "I'd like that very much." The cabin appeared slowly through the snow, a small structure of rough-hewn logs with a stone chimney and a narrow porch. Smoke rose from the chimney in a steady stream. A barn stood nearby, weathered but solid. Chickens scattered as the wagon approached, squawking their displeasure. Daniel pulled the wagon to a stop and jumped down. He reached up for Emma first, swinging her to the ground, then offered his hand to Sarah again. "Welcome to the Carter Ranch," he said dryly. "Such as it is." Sarah stepped down her boots, sinking into several inches of snow. The cabin looked even smaller up close. One window facing the front shutters painted dark green. A door that hung slightly crooked on its hinges. But smoke meant fire. Fire meant warmth. And warmth was more than she'd had any right to expect today. "Come on," Daniel said, heading toward the door, with Emma running ahead. "Let's get inside before we all freeze." The interior was dim and sparse. One main room with a fireplace taking up most of the far wall, a table with 3 mismatched chairs, a narrow bed against the left side. Hooks on the wall held coats and a few cooking implements. A rocking chair sat near the fire, a basket of mending beside it. It was clean, though. Swept floors, organized shelves, no dishes piled in the wash basin. "There's only one bed," Daniel said, hanging his hat on a hook. "But I've got blankets. You can sleep there tonight. I'll take the floor." "Mr. Carter, I can't." "Yes, you can. It's decided." He moved to the fireplace, stirred the pot hanging over the flames. "Stew's been cooking since this morning. Should be ready soon." Emma had already scrambled up onto the bed, digging through a small wooden box. "Look, Miss Sarah, my rocks." Sarah set her bag down and crossed to the bed. Emma held out her treasures, one by one, smooth river stones, pieces of quartz, a chunk of fool's gold that caught the firelight. "These are beautiful," Sarah said softly. Mama helped me find them. Before she... Emma's voice trailed off. Before she died, Daniel finished quietly. He didn't turn from the fire. Her name was Kaya. She was White River Apache, died from fever last winter. Sarah looked at the small shelf above the bed. A beaded dress hung there carefully preserved. Beside it, a pair of moccasins, tiny child-sized. A medicine pouch. "I'm sorry," Sarah said. "People keep saying that." Daniel ladled stew into wooden bowls. Like words change anything. They don't. But sometimes they're all we have. He looked at her, then really looked, and something shifted in his expression. "Yeah, I suppose that's true." They ate in near silence. The stew was simple venison potatoes, carrots, but hot and filling. Emma chattered between bites about her chickens, about the fox she'd seen last week, about how her papa had promised to teach her to ride come spring. Sarah listened, answering when appropriate, but mostly just absorbing. The warmth of the fire, the sound of a child's voice, the strange, fragile sense of being inside instead of outside, wanted instead of rejected, even if it was only for one night. After supper, Daniel washed the bowls, while Emma showed Sarah her drawings, rough sketches done with charcoal on scraps of paper. A horse, a bird, a woman with long dark hair. "That's Mama," Emma said softly. "I'm forgetting what she looked like. Papa says that's okay, but it makes me sad." Sarah's throat tightened. "I bet she was beautiful." She was. Papa cried when she died. He didn't think I saw, but I did. "Emma." Daniel's voice was quiet but firm. "That's enough." "Sorry, Papa." He sighed, drying his hands on a cloth. "It's bedtime, little bird. Go get changed." Emma obeyed without argument, pulling a nightgown from beneath the bed and changing quickly. She climbed under the quilts, then looked at Sarah hopefully. "Will you tell me a story?" "Emma," Daniel started. "Please, just a short one." Sarah glanced at Daniel. He gave a small nod. She sat on the edge of the bed, trying to remember the stories the nuns used to tell at the orphanage. Finally, she settled on one. Her mother, her Lakota mother, the woman she'd never known, but who lived in whispered fragments, would have told. "Once there was a girl who walked between two worlds," Sarah began. "She belonged to neither, but carried pieces of both. The people of the day said she was too dark. The people of the night said she was too light. So she walked alone, searching for a place to rest." Emma's eyes grew heavy halfway through. By the time Sarah finished, the child was asleep, her breathing soft and even. Sarah stood carefully, not wanting to wake her. Daniel was watching from the rocking chair. "That was kind of you." "She's a sweet child." "She is." He stood, gathered blankets from a chest. "You can take the bed. I meant what I said." "Mr. Carter." "Daniel, if you're sleeping in my house, you can use my name." "Daniel," Sarah corrected. "I don't want to put you out." "You're not." He spread the blankets on the floor near the hearth. "I've slept in worse places." Sarah sat on the edge of the bed, suddenly exhausted. The day's events crashed over her all at once. The train, the empty platform, Thomas Whitmore's absence, the cruel laughter, Emma's question, this strange cabin in the middle of nowhere, with a widowed rancher and his half-Apache daughter. Sarah. She looked up. Daniel stood by the fire, backlit by the flames, his expression unreadable. "I don't know what you're running from," he said. "And I won't ask. But you should know folks around here don't take kindly to people like us. Mixed bloods, outsiders, anybody who doesn't fit their idea of proper. If you stay longer than tonight, it won't be easy." "Nothing in my life has been easy, Daniel." He nodded slowly. "Fair enough." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because Emma's already attached to you." His jaw tightened. "And when you leave, it's going to hurt her. So if you're planning to go, it'd be better to do it tomorrow before she gets any more ideas about you staying." Sarah looked at the sleeping child curled beneath the quilts with her dark hair spread across the pillow. "Can you be my mama?" "What if I wanted to stay?" Sarah asked quietly. "Just for a few days, to figure things out." Daniel was silent for a long moment. "Then you'd be welcome," he said finally. "But don't do it for me. And don't do it because you feel sorry for Emma. Only stay if it's what you actually want. And if I don't know what I want, then I guess you've got a few days to figure it out." He settled onto his makeshift bed, turning his back to give her privacy. Sarah changed into her nightgown behind the cover of the blanket, then slipped beneath the quilts beside Emma. The child shifted in her sleep, instinctively curling closer to Sarah's warmth. Outside, the wind howled. Snow tapped against the window like restless fingers. Inside, the fire crackled low. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, Sarah fell asleep feeling something other than alone. Even if it was only temporary. Even if it was only pretend. Even if tomorrow she'd wake up and have to leave. Tonight, she belonged somewhere, and that was enough. Sarah woke to the sound of an axe biting into wood. The fire had burned down to embers during the night, and pale gray light filtered through the window. Emma still slept beside her, one small hand curled against Sarah's shoulder. Outside, the rhythmic thunk-thunk-thunk continued steady and methodical. She slipped from beneath the quilts carefully, not wanting to wake the child. The floor was cold against her bare feet as she crossed to the window and looked out. Daniel stood in the yard splitting firewood. He'd already cleared a path from the cabin to the barn's snow piled high on either side. His breath came in white clouds, and even from here, she could see the tension in his shoulders, the way he brought the axe down, with more force than necessary. A man working out something he couldn't say aloud. Sarah dressed quickly behind the privacy of a blanket, then added wood to the fire. The flames caught and grew, pushing back the morning cold. She found cornmeal in a tin on the shelf, a jar of preserved berries eggs in a basket near the door. She was mixing batter for Johnny cakes when Daniel came inside, carrying an armload of split wood. He stopped when he saw her at the stove. "You don't have to do that." "I know." Sarah poured batter onto the hot griddle. "But you fed me last night. Seemed only fair to return the favor." Daniel set the wood down by the hearth, brushing bark from his sleeves. "I didn't ask you to stay so you'd cook. I didn't stay so you'd keep chopping wood in the freezing cold, but here we are." The corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile. "Fair point." He washed his hands in the basin, then poured himself coffee from the pot that had been staying warm by the fire. For a while they worked in companionable silence, Sarah cooking, Daniel setting the table, both of them moving around the small space with the careful awareness of strangers sharing close quarters. Emma woke when the smell of food filled the cabin. She sat up, hair wild around her face, and her eyes found Sarah immediately. "You're still here." "I'm still here." The smile that broke across Emma's face was pure sunlight. Breakfast was simple, but good. They ate together at the small table, Emma chattering about her plans for the day, while Daniel listened with the patience of a man used to a child's endless questions. "Can Miss Sarah help me collect eggs, Papa?" "If she wants to." Emma turned to Sarah hopefully. "Do you want to?" Sarah looked at this little girl who'd asked her to be a mother before even knowing her name, and something warm unfurled in her chest. "I'd love to." After breakfast, Sarah helped Emma into her coat and mittens. The child's excitement was contagious as they trudged through the snow toward the chicken coop, Emma pointing out animal tracks and explaining which hens were friendly and which ones pecked. "That one's Bessie, she's mean, and that's Clover. She's my favorite because she lets me pet her. And that one's Papa's favorite, but he won't say so because he says chickens aren't for petting, they're for eggs." Sarah laughed, the sound surprising even herself. "Does your Papa pet Bessie when you're not looking?" "Sometimes. I've seen him." Emma giggled, then stopped suddenly, looking up at Sarah with those solemn dark eyes. "Do you like it here?" The question landed heavier than it should have. "I like you," Sarah said carefully. "And your Papa's been very kind." "But do you like it enough to stay?" Sarah knelt in the snow, bringing herself eye level with the child. "Emma, sweetheart, I can't just stay. Your papa has a life here, and I'd be intruding." "But papa said you could stay a few days." "A few days isn't forever." Emma's lip trembled. "Why not?" "Because—" Sarah struggled for words a 4-year-old would understand. "Because people can't just move into other people's homes. It doesn't work that way." "Mama did. Papa said she just showed up one day by the river and never left." Sarah's throat tightened. "That was different." "Why?" "Because your papa loved your mama. He could love you too." The innocence of it nearly broke Sarah's heart. "Oh, sweetheart, it's not that simple." But Emma had already moved on, distracted by a chicken that had escaped the coop. She chased after it, laughing, and the moment passed. They collected eggs together, Emma explaining the proper way to reach under a hen without getting pecked. Sarah listened, letting the child's voice wash over her, trying not to think about how easy it would be to pretend this was her life. This cabin, this child, this quiet morning routine. When they returned inside, Daniel was repairing a harness at the table. He looked up as they entered, snowflakes melting in Emma's hair. "How many eggs?" "7," Emma announced proudly. "And Miss Sarah only got pecked once." "That's better than I do most mornings." Sarah set the basket down, flexing her sore hand. "Bessie has strong feelings about strangers." "Bessie has strong feelings about everyone." Daniel set aside the harness. "Emma, go wash up. Your hands are filthy." Emma obeyed, skipping toward the wash basin while humming under her breath. Daniel stood crossing to where Sarah stood by the door. Up close, she could see the fine lines around his eyes, the silver starting to thread through his dark hair at the temples. He couldn't have been more than 35, but he carried himself like someone much older. "She's getting attached," he said quietly. "I can see it happening." "I know. If you're planning to leave tomorrow, you should tell her tonight. Give her time to prepare." Sarah met his gaze. "What if I'm not planning to leave tomorrow?" Something flickered in his expression. "Then what are you planning?" "I don't know yet." Sarah pulled off her mittens, fingers still stinging from the cold. "But I need to figure out what comes next. Whether I try another town, look for work, write to the orphanage, and ask them to take me back." "The orphanage?" "Where I grew up. The nuns said I'd always have a place there if I needed it. Teaching the younger girls, helping in the kitchen." She tried to keep her voice steady. "It's not much of a life, but it's something." Daniel was quiet for a moment. Then, "What about staying here, just for a while? Until you figure things out?" Sarah's breath caught. "Daniel." "Not as a wife," he added quickly. "Not as anything except someone who needs a place to stay. I could use help around the ranch. Emma needs someone during the day when I'm working. And you need time to make a real plan, not just run blindly to the next disaster." "You don't know me." "No. But I know what it's like to be desperate and alone. And I know Emma lights up when you're around in a way she hasn't since Kaya died." His jaw tightened. "I'm not asking for forever. Just a few weeks. Maybe a month. Give yourself time to breathe." Sarah wanted to say no, wanted to protect herself from the inevitable hurt when this temporary arrangement ended and she had to leave anyway. But the alternative was going back out into the cold, into towns where Thomas Whitmore had probably already spread word about the half-breed mail-order bride who'd been rejected. Into a world that had made it abundantly clear she didn't belong. "A month," she said finally. "And I earn my keep. I won't be Charity. You cook like you did this morning and keep Emma from getting herself killed, you'll earn it twice over." They shook hands. His palm was warm and calloused, his grip firm, but not crushing. "Thank you, Daniel." "Don't thank me yet. You haven't survived a Montana winter here." The first week passed in a strange, fragile rhythm. Sarah woke early, made breakfast, helped Emma with her chores. Daniel worked outside, mending fences, checking traps, caring for the horses. They ate lunch together, usually in silence, while Emma filled the quiet with stories. Afternoons, Sarah taught Emma her letters using charcoal and old newspapers. Or they baked bread, or Sarah mended clothes while the child played with her rocks. Evenings were harder. That's when the cabin felt smallest, when they were all three together with nowhere to hide. Daniel would sit by the fire working on some repair or another. Sarah would sew. Emma would drift between them like a bridge, asking questions, telling stories, trying to weave them into something that resembled a family. On the 8th night, Sarah was stitching a tear in one of Daniel's shirts when Emma climbed into her lap. "Miss Sarah." "When you were little, did you have a mama?" Sarah's hands stilled on the fabric. Daniel looked up from the saddle he was oiling. "I did," Sarah said carefully. "For a little while." "What happened to her?" "She died when I was born. But there was a woman at the orphanage who took care of me, Sister Margaret. She was kind." "Did she love you?" Sarah's throat tightened. "I think so. In her way." Emma was quiet for a moment, her small fingers tracing the pattern on Sarah's skirt. "Do you miss her?" "Every day." "I miss my mama every day too." Emma's voice was small. "Sometimes I can't remember her face anymore. Just pieces. Her hands. Her voice singing. But not her face." Sarah looked at Daniel. His expression had gone carefully blank, but his knuckles were white where he gripped the saddle. "That's normal, sweetheart," Sarah said gently. "When people leave us sometimes the memories fade. But that doesn't mean they weren't real. Doesn't mean they didn't matter. Papa says Mama's watching from the stars. I'm sure she is. Do you think she likes you?" The question caught Sarah off guard. "What?" "Mama, do you think she likes that you're here, taking care of me?" Sarah glanced at Daniel again. He'd set down the saddle, his full attention on this conversation now. "I think," Sarah said slowly, "that your mama would want you to be happy and safe. And if having me here helps with that, then yes, I think she'd be glad." Emma nodded, satisfied. She yawned, nestling deeper into Sarah's arms. "Will you tell me another story? About the girl who walked between two worlds?" Sarah had been telling that story in pieces all week, adding new chapters each night. Emma never tired of it. Once, Sarah began, her voice soft. The girl came to a village at the edge of a great forest. The people there were afraid of her because she was different. They whispered behind their hands and turned away when she approached. Emma fell asleep before the story ended. Sarah carried her to the bed, tucked the quilts around her small body, brushed dark hair from her forehead. When she turned back, Daniel was watching her. "You're good with her. She's easy to love. Not for everyone." He stood crossing to the window. Snow had started falling again, thick flakes drifting past the glass. "Most folks in town cross the street when they see us coming. They don't say it to my face, but I hear the whispers. Half-breed, savage's daughter. Should have been left with her mother's people." Sarah moved to stand beside him. "People fear what they don't understand." "And do you fear it?" "Fear what?" "This." He gestured vaguely. "Mixed blood, walking between worlds like your story, never quite belonging anywhere." Sarah was quiet for a long moment, watching the snowfall. "I don't fear it," she said finally. "I am it. My father was Irish, a railroad worker who thought my mother was beautiful enough to take but not human enough to marry. My mother was Lakota. She died bringing me into this world, and I've spent every day since trying to figure out where I fit." Daniel turned to look at her. "Did you ever figure it out?" "No, but I stopped apologizing for it." Something shifted in his expression. Understanding, maybe, or recognition. "Kaya used to say the same thing," he said quietly. "That she wouldn't apologize for who she was, wouldn't make herself smaller to make other people comfortable." He smiled, sad and distant. First time we met, I was half dead from a bullet wound, bleeding out by the river. She found me, dragged me to her camp, spent 3 days nursing me back to life. What happened then? I fell in love with her. Simple. Direct. Didn't matter that we couldn't speak the same language. Didn't matter that my family disowned me when I brought her home. Didn't matter that the town treated her like she was less than the horses. His voice roughened. She was the strongest person I ever knew. And when she died... He trailed off, jaw tight. Sarah waited. When she died, Daniel continued, I didn't think I'd survive it. Emma was barely 3. I didn't know how to braid hair or sing lullabies or answer the 1,000 questions she asked every day. I just existed, went through the motions, kept her alive. You did more than that. You kept her safe, loved. That's everything. Maybe. He looked at Emma sleeping peacefully across the room. But she needed more than I could give. Still does. The words hung between them, heavy with implication. Sarah knew what he was really saying. What he couldn't quite bring himself to ask. Daniel. I'm not asking you to stay forever, he said quickly. I know that's not what this is. But while you're here, if you could just be there for her, the way Kaya would have been, just for a little while. Sarah's chest ached. I can do that. Thank you. They stood in silence, watching the snow accumulate on the windowsill. Outside, the world turned white and quiet. Inside, something unspoken settled between them. Not love, not yet, but the beginning of trust. The beginning of something that might, given time, become more. But neither of them said it aloud. On the 10th day, Emma woke with a fever. Sarah noticed first. The child had been quieter than usual at breakfast, picking at her food, and when Sarah touched her forehead, the heat nearly burned. Daniel? He was at her side instantly, his hand replacing Sarah's on Emma's brow. His face went pale. No, not again. It's probably just a cold, Sarah said, trying to keep her voice calm. Children get fevers all the time? That's what I thought with Kaya. His hand shook. Just a fever. Just a chill. And then... Emma whimpered, curling into a ball. Papa, I don't feel good. Daniel scooped her up, carried her to the bed, his movements jerky with panic. We need to get her to town. Find the doctor. Daniel, listen to me. Sarah gripped his arm. The roads are barely passable. It'll take hours to get there and she's burning up now. We need to bring the fever down here. I don't know how, but I do. He looked at her, desperate and terrified. My father, Sarah said quietly, was a medicine man among the Lakota. Before he died, he taught the nuns at the orphanage. They taught me. She moved to her bag, pulled out bundles of dried herbs she'd brought from the last town. I can help her, Daniel, but you need to trust me. If she dies, she won't. Sarah met his gaze, steady and sure. I won't let her. For a moment, he just stared at her. Then he nodded once sharp. Tell me what you need. Sarah worked quickly. She boiled water, steeped willow bark, and yarrow, crushed feverfew into a paste. Daniel followed her instructions without question, fetching cold water from the well-tearing cloth into strips holding his daughter, while Sarah coaxed bitter tea past her lips. Emma cried, fighting the medicine, but Sarah was patient and persistent. I know it tastes awful, sweetheart, but it'll help. I promise. I want Mama. Emma sobbed. Daniel's face crumpled. I know, little bird. I know. Hours passed. The fever climbed higher. Emma's skin burned, her breathing turned shallow, and Daniel paced like a caged animal, hands clenching and unclenching. This isn't working, he said roughly. We should have gone to town. The fever has to peak before it breaks. This is normal. Normal? She's on fire. Daniel? Sarah caught his hands, forced him to look at her. I know you're scared, but panicking won't help her. I need you to stay calm. Can you do that? He took a shuddering breath. Nodded. Good. Now go get more cold water. We need to keep the compresses fresh. He obeyed, grateful for something to do. Sarah sat beside Emma, wiping her face with a cool cloth, singing softly in Lakota songs. She barely remembered words. Her mother's people would have sung melodies that lived in her blood, even when she couldn't recall where she'd learned them. Sometime past midnight, Emma's eyes fluttered open. Miss Sarah. I'm here, sweetheart. Are you my mama now? Sarah's vision blurred. Do you want me to be? Yes. Emma's voice was barely a whisper. Please. Then yes. I'm your mama now. Emma smiled, then drifted back to sleep. Daniel had heard everything. He stood in the doorway, water bucket forgotten in his hands, staring at Sarah with an expression she couldn't quite read. You didn't have to say that. I know. She'll hold you to it. I know that too. He set down the bucket, crossed to the bed, knelt beside Sarah. Up close she could see the exhaustion in his face, the fear he'd been carrying for hours. If she lives, he said hoarsely, I owe you everything. You owe me nothing. I'm just doing what any mother would do. His breath hitched. Sarah. Emma stirred between them, her skin finally cooling. The fever had broken. Sarah checked her pulse, her breathing the color returning to her cheeks. She's going to be fine, Sarah whispered. Daniel's head dropped, his shoulders shaking. He didn't make a sound, but Sarah saw the tears fall. She reached out, rested her hand on his shoulder. He covered it with his own and held on. They stayed like that until dawn. Two people who'd been strangers 10 days ago, now bound together by a sleeping child, and a promise neither had meant to make. But promises, Sarah thought, had a way of becoming real, whether you planned them or not. Emma recovered slowly over the next 3 days. Her appetite returned in small increments: broth first, then soft bread, finally asking for bacon at breakfast, with the demanding tone of a child who knew she'd been sick enough to get away with anything. Sarah stayed close, watching for any sign the fever might return. Daniel hovered even closer, checking Emma's forehead every hour, until the child swatted his hand away with an exasperated sigh. Papa, I'm fine. Miss Sarah fixed me. I know she did, little bird. Then stop worrying so much. You're making me nervous. Sarah hid her smile behind her hand. Daniel caught it anyway, his expression softening in a way she'd never seen before. On the 4th day after the fever broke, Emma declared herself well enough to go outside. Sarah bundled her in extra layers while Daniel stood watch like a sentinel, ready to veto the whole plan if his daughter so much as coughed. She needs fresh air, Sarah said quietly. Being cooped up is making her restless. She nearly died 4 days ago. And now she's better. You can't keep her wrapped in cotton forever. He opened his mouth to argue, then closed it again. Fine. But only for an hour. And if she looks tired, we'll come straight back. I promise. They went to check the traps Daniel had set near the tree line. Emma chattered the entire way, pointing out animal tracks in the snow, asking questions Sarah only half knew how to answer. Why do rabbits hop instead of walk? I suppose their legs are built that way. But why? I don't know, sweetheart. Maybe they just prefer it. Emma considered this seriously. I think if I was a rabbit, I'd hop everywhere too. It looks fun. She demonstrated bouncing through the snow until she lost her balance and tumbled into a drift. Sarah's heart stopped, but Emma just laughed, brushing snow from her face. I'm okay. See, I'm not even cold. Sarah helped her up anyway, checking her over with hands that shook slightly. Please be careful. You sound like Papa. Your papa's a smart man. Emma grinned. Are you going to marry him? The question landed like a stone in still water. What makes you ask that? Because you act like Mama did, taking care of me, taking care of him, and he looks at you the way he used to look at her. Sarah's throat went tight. Emma, I wouldn't mind. If you did marry him, I mean, then you'd really be my mama forever, not just pretend. Sweetheart, it's not that simple. Why not? You like him. He likes you. I like both of you. That's simple. Out of the mouths of children, Sarah thought. Grown-up feelings are more complicated. They don't have to be. Before Sarah could respond, Emma spotted something in the snow and ran ahead. Sarah followed her mind spinning. Did Daniel look at her differently? She'd noticed him watching sometimes when he thought she wasn't paying attention. Noticed how his hand lingered when he passed her something at the table. Noticed the way his voice softened when he said her name. But noticing wasn't the same as understanding. And understanding wasn't the same as wanting. Was it? They returned to the cabin to find a horse tied outside. A stranger's horse, well-groomed and expensive-looking, with saddlebags that marked its owner as someone of means. Daniel stood on the porch, his posture rigid. A man Sarah didn't recognize faced him, dressed in fine clothes that looked absurd against the rough backdrop of the ranch tailored coat. Polished boots, a hat that had never seen real work. "Papa," Emma called out. Both men turned. The stranger's eyes found Emma first, then shifted to Sarah. His lip curled with something that might have been disgust. "So, it's true," the stranger said. "You've taken in another squaw to raise the half-breed." Daniel's hand moved to the knife at his belt. "Watch your mouth, Whitmore." Sarah's blood ran cold. Whitmore. Thomas Whitmore. The man who was supposed to meet her at the train station. The man who'd left her standing in the snow. "Miss Bennet." Whitmore's voice dripped false courtesy. "I apologize for not meeting you as planned. When I learned of your heritage, I thought it best to avoid any unpleasantness." By leaving her stranded, Daniel's voice was dangerously quiet. "Real noble of you. I saved us both considerable embarrassment. A woman of mixed blood has no place in polite society. Surely you understand that better than anyone, Carter. Get off my land." "In a moment. First, I thought Miss Bennet should know that her arrival caused quite a stir in town. People are talking. Wondering why the half-breed mail-order bride is living out here with a widower and his Indian child. The speculation is unflattering." Sarah found her voice. "What people speculate is none of my concern." "Perhaps it should be. Reputation matters, Miss Bennet, especially for women in your position." His smile was cold. "Then again, perhaps you're used to being talked about. I did some research after receiving your initial letter. 4 broken engagements, 3 different towns, always the same story, men who thought they could overlook your bloodline until they actually had to live with it." "That's enough," Daniel said. "Is it I'm simply trying to help Miss Bennet understand reality. She's a curiosity here, Carter, an oddity. People will tolerate her as long as she keeps her place, but the moment she tries to claim more, tries to become part of this community, tries to marry, tries to pretend she belongs, they'll turn on her the same way they turned on your wife." The words hung in the air like poison. Daniel moved so fast, Sarah almost missed it. One moment he was on the porch, the next he had Whitmore by the collar, slamming him against the hitching post hard enough to rattle his teeth. "You want to talk about my wife?" Daniel's voice was barely human. "You want to explain to me how a woman who never hurt anyone ended up beaten and left to die in the snow while I was gone? How the good Christian folk of Sweetwater stood by and let it happen because she was Apache?" Whitmore struggled against his grip. "I had nothing to do with that. But you didn't stop it either. None of you did." Daniel shoved him toward his horse. "Get out, and if I see you on my land again, I won't be so polite." Whitmore straightened his coat, trying to salvage his dignity. He mounted his horse with jerky movements, then looked down at Sarah. "You could have had a good life, Miss Bennet, a real home. But you chose this." He gestured at the cabin with contempt. "I hope it's worth the shame." He rode off before anyone could respond. Emma pressed against Sarah's side, trembling. Sarah wrapped an arm around her, automatically holding her close while watching Daniel's back. His shoulders heaved with each breath, hands clenched so tight his knuckles had gone white. "Daniel, take Emma inside. Daniel, please. Inside, now." Sarah obeyed, guiding Emma through the door. The child was crying silently, the way children did when they'd learned that making noise only made things worse. "It's all right, sweetheart. Your papa's just upset." That man was mean. Yes, he was. Is it true? What he said about Mama? Sarah's heart broke. She knelt in front of Emma, taking the child's small face in her hands. "Your Mama was brave and beautiful and strong, and sometimes people fear strength in others. They fear what they don't understand, so they hurt it. Did they hurt her because of me? Because I'm half—" "Oh, sweetheart, no. They hurt her because they were cruel. That's not your fault. It's never been your fault." Emma threw her arms around Sarah's neck, sobbing properly now. Sarah held her, rocking slightly, making the soft, shushing sounds mothers had made since the beginning of time. The door opened. Daniel stood in the doorway, snow dusting his shoulders. He looked hollowed out, like something vital had been carved from his chest. "Emma, go wash your face. Then bed. But it's not even dark yet. Bed." His tone left no room for argument. Emma obeyed, casting worried glances back at both adults as she went to the wash basin. Sarah stood slowly. "Daniel, don't. We need to talk about this." "There's nothing to talk about. Whitmore's a bastard. We knew that already. He's spreading rumors. Let him." "Daniel, this affects Emma. It affects you, and whether you like it or not, it affects me too. If people think, what, that you're my mistress, my housekeeper, my next Indian wife." His laugh was bitter. "People will think what they want regardless of the truth. That's what they do. So we just let them. What choice do we have? Ride into town and explain that you're here because my daughter asked you to stay, that we're not sleeping together. We're just two broken people trying to survive the winter." They won't believe it. They don't want to believe it. Sarah flinched. "Is that what we are? Just broken people surviving?" He finally looked at her, really looked at her, and the pain in his eyes nearly undid her. "I don't know what we are, Sarah. I know Emma loves you. I know you saved her life. I know I'm grateful you're here." He dragged a hand through his hair. "But Whitmore's right about one thing. You deserve better than this. Better than being whispered about. Better than being associated with a man whose wife was murdered by his neighbors. That's not— It is. You want the whole ugly truth, fine." He moved to the window, staring out at the gathering darkness. "I went into town for supplies. Took me 3 days. When I came back, the door was open. Snow everywhere. Kaya was lying in the yard. They'd dragged her outside, beaten her. Someone said she'd been stealing from the general store. Someone else said she'd cursed a child who got sick. All lies. All excuses to do what they'd wanted to do from the beginning, get rid of the Indian woman corrupting Daniel Carter's soul." Sarah's hand went to her mouth. "Emma was hiding under the table." Daniel continued, his voice flat. 3 years old. Watching through the window while her mother died. She didn't speak for 2 months after. Just stared. Like the words had died with Kaya. Oh God. Daniel. I buried Kaya beneath the cedar tree. Told myself I'd keep Emma safe no matter what. That I'd never let anyone hurt her the way they hurt her mother. He turned to face Sarah. And then you showed up. And Emma smiled again. Started talking again. Started hoping again. And I let it happen because I was selfish enough to want that for her. There's nothing selfish about wanting your daughter to be happy. There is when it puts a target on your back. His eyes were fierce. Whitmore came here to warn you, to scare you off before you get too comfortable. Because if you stay, if you become part of our lives, they'll do to you what they did to Kaya. And I can't. His voice cracked. I can't bury another woman I care about. I won't. The admission hung between them. Sarah crossed to him slowly. He didn't move as she approached, didn't flinch when she reached up to touch his face. I'm not Kaya, she said quietly. And I'm not some fragile thing that'll break the first time someone's cruel. I've survived 28 years of cruelty, Daniel. I know how to endure. You shouldn't have to. Neither should you. Neither should Emma. But here we are. She let her hand drop. You asked me to stay, to help with Emma, to give myself time to figure out what comes next. Well, I'm still figuring, but I won't be scared off by Thomas Whitmore or anyone else who thinks I don't belong. Sarah, I'm not done. She took a breath, steadying herself. You want to know what I am, what we are. I don't have an answer. All I know is that for the first time in my entire life, I wake up in the morning and don't feel alone. I look at Emma and see a future instead of just emptiness. I look at you and see... She stopped, realizing she'd gone too far. Daniel's eyes searched hers. See what? Someone who understands, she finished quietly. Someone who knows what it costs to be unwanted. To love someone the world says you shouldn't love. To fight for a place to belong. And is that enough understanding? I don't know. Maybe. She managed a small smile. Ask me again in a month. He almost smiled back. Almost. Emma appeared in the doorway, dressed in her nightgown, clutching her rag doll. Her eyes were red-rimmed, but dry. Are you leaving? She asked Sarah. No, sweetheart. I'm not leaving. Promise? Sarah glanced at Daniel. He gave the smallest nod. I promise. Emma ran to her, wrapping small arms around Sarah's waist. Good, because you're my mama now, and mamas don't leave. Sarah held her close, meeting Daniel's gaze over the child's head. Something passed between them. Not quite love, not yet, but the beginning of it. The possibility of it. No, Sarah whispered. Mamas don't leave. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She lay in the dark, listening to Emma's soft breathing beside her, Daniel's quiet movements, as he added wood to the fire. Finally, she gave up and slipped from bed. Daniel looked up as she approached, wordless question in his eyes. Can't sleep, she said. Me neither. They sat together by the fire, the only sound the crackle of burning wood. Outside, wind howled through the trees. Inside, warmth. Tell me about her, Sarah said softly. About Kaya. Not how she died. How she lived. Daniel was quiet so long Sarah thought he wouldn't answer. Then, she laughed at everything, even things that weren't funny. Especially things that weren't funny. He stared into the flames. First time I brought her to town, some woman said something cruel. Kaya just laughed. Told me in Apache that the woman's face looked like dried meat left too long in the sun. The woman didn't know what Kaya said, but she knew she was being mocked. Made her angrier than any insult in English would have. Sarah found herself smiling. She sounds remarkable. She was. Stubborn as hell too. Refused to speak English for the first year. Said if I wanted to talk to her I'd learn her language. So I did. Do you still speak it? Some. I teach Emma words, songs, stories Kaya used to tell. His voice roughened. It's all I have left of her. That and our daughter. That's not nothing, Daniel. That's everything. He looked at her, then the firelight casting shadows across his face. Why did you really stay? And don't say it was for Emma or because you needed time. What's the real reason? Sarah considered lying, considered deflecting. But something about the late hour and the intimacy of the firelight demanded honesty. Because when Emma asked me to be her mama, it was the first time anyone ever wanted me for something other than what I could give them or how I could serve them. She just wanted me. And I realized I'd spent my whole life waiting for someone to just want me. Not in spite of who I am, just me. And now I'm terrified, she admitted. Because wanting something is dangerous. It means you can lose it. And I've lost everything before. I don't know if I can survive losing this too. Daniel shifted closer. Not touching, but near enough that she could feel his warmth. I know that fear, he said. I live with it every day. Every time Emma runs outside. Every time she gets too close to the horses. Every time someone from town looks at her the wrong way. I'm terrified I'll lose her the way I lost Kaya. But you keep going. Because what's the alternative? Lock her inside forever, teach her to be afraid of living. He shook his head. Kaya would have hated that. She used to say fear is just love that hasn't learned to fight yet. Sarah's throat tightened. She was right. They sat in silence, shoulders almost touching, watching the fire burn down to embers. Neither moved to add more wood. Neither wanted to break the spell of this moment, this fragile, honest thing growing between them. Sarah. Yes. I meant what I said earlier. About caring. About not wanting to bury another woman. He paused. But I need you to know that if you stay, it won't just be for Emma. It'll be for me too. And I don't know if that's fair to ask. Her heart hammered against her ribs. What are you asking, Daniel? I'm asking if there's a chance that this us could be more than just two people surviving together. More than just convenience or necessity. He finally looked at her. I'm asking if you feel it too. She did. God help her, she did. Yes, she whispered. I feel it. And does that terrify you? Absolutely. He smiled then, a real smile that softened the hard edges of his face. Good. I'd be worried if it didn't. Sarah found herself smiling back. So what do we do now? I don't know. Take it slow. See where it goes. Try not to let fear make our decisions. That sounds reasonable? Kaya would have laughed at how reasonable we're being. She believed in diving in head first and figuring it out later. And you... What do you believe? Daniel reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, his calloused hand covered hers. I believe some things are worth the risk, he said quietly. And I believe you're one of them. Sarah's eyes burned. She laced her fingers through his, holding on like he was the only solid thing in a spinning world. I believe that too. They stayed like that until the fire died completely, hands joined, neither speaking, both understanding that something had shifted, something that couldn't be taken back. When Sarah finally returned to bed, Emma stirred. Mama, the word still caught Sarah off guard, still made her chest tight. I'm here, sweetheart. Go back to sleep. Were you talking to Papa? Yes. Is he happy now? Sarah thought about Daniel's smile, the way his hand had felt in hers, the possibility stretching out before them like unmarked snow. I think he might be. Emma snuggled closer. Good. You make him happy, like Mama used to. Sarah kissed the top of her head, breathing in the child's sweet scent. Sleep now. But long after Emma's breathing evened out, Sarah lay awake, staring at the ceiling, terrified and hopeful, and more alive than she'd felt in years. Across the room, Daniel sat in the rocking chair watching over both of them, and for the first time since Kaya died, he let himself imagine a future that didn't hurt. Morning came with unexpected warmth. The sun broke through the clouds for the first time in weeks, turning the snow-covered valley into something that almost looked welcoming. Sarah woke to Emma's excited squeals and the smell of coffee already brewing. Mama, look, the sun came out. Can we go outside? Please? Sarah sat up, rubbing sleep from her eyes. Daniel stood at the stove cooking eggs, and he glanced over his shoulder with something soft in his expression. Morning? Morning. Sarah's cheeks warmed at the memory of last night. His hand in hers. The words they'd spoken. The possibility hanging between them like held breath. Emma bounced on the bed. Papa said if you said yes, we could walk to the creek. He's going to teach me to skip stones. Did he now? I did. Daniel confirmed. Figured we could all use some air. Unless you'd rather stay inside and rest. Sarah recognized the offer for what it was, a chance to retreat, to pretend last night hadn't happened, to keep things simple and safe. She stood reaching for her shawl. I'd love to see Emma skip stones. Daniel's smile was small but genuine. Good. They ate breakfast together, Emma chattering about all the things she planned to do now that the sun was finally shining. Sarah and Daniel exchanged glances across the table, neither quite able to look away for long. After breakfast, they bundled into coats and scarves. Emma ran ahead, leaving small footprints in the fresh snow, while Sarah and Daniel walked side by side. She's happy, Daniel said quietly. She is. I haven't seen her this happy since before Kaya died. Sarah glanced at him. Does that bother you? No. He was quiet for a moment. Maybe a little. Not because I begrudge her happiness, but because it reminds me how much she lost. How much we both lost. Loving someone new doesn't erase the person who came before. Kaya used to say something similar, that the heart doesn't replace love, it just grows bigger to hold more of it. She was wise. She was. Daniel's hand brushed against Sarah's. I think she'd like you. I hope so. They reached the creek where the water still ran despite the cold, moving swift and clear over smooth stones. Emma immediately began collecting rocks, testing their weight, trying to mimic the motion Daniel showed her. Like this, Papa. Almost. Keep your wrist loose. Let the stone do the work. Sarah watched them together, father teaching daughter, both of them silhouetted against the bright snow. Something ached in her chest, not pain exactly, but the sweet hurt of wanting something so badly it frightened her. Your turn, Daniel said, offering her a smooth stone. I don't know how. I'll teach you. He moved behind her, positioning her arm, his chest warm against her back. See that flat spot in the water? Aim just past it. And when you throw, flick your wrist like this. His hand guided hers through the motion. Sarah was acutely aware of how close he stood, the smell of wood smoke and leather, the roughness of his calloused palm. Now try. She threw. The stone skipped once, then sank. Emma clapped. You did it, Mama. Barely. Better than my first try, Daniel said. I sank 6 stones before I managed even one skip. They spent the next hour by the creek, all 3 of them throwing stones and laughing when they sank, or cheering when they skipped. Emma managed 3 skips on her best throw and crowed with victory. For a while, Sarah let herself pretend this was her real life. That she belonged here with this man and this child. That tomorrow wouldn't bring new challenges, new threats, new reasons to leave. But reality had a way of intruding. They were walking back to the cabin when Emma stopped, suddenly pointing at the trail ahead. Papa, someone's coming. Daniel tensed immediately. His hand moved to Sarah's arm, pulling her and Emma behind him in one smooth motion. 2 riders approached through the snow. As they drew closer, Sarah recognized them, the ranch hands who'd been laughing at her that first day at the train station. They reined in their horses a few yards away. The taller one tipped his hat mockingly. Carter, heard you were harboring the mail-order bride Whitmore rejected. What I do on my own land ain't your concern, Stevens. It is when it affects the whole town. Whitmore's been talking. Says the woman's living in sin with you. Says the child's being raised by another squaw just like the last one. Daniel's voice went deadly quiet. Get off my land. We're just passing along a message from the town council. They want the woman gone. Say she's a bad influence. The town council can go to hell. Stevens laughed. Figured you'd say that. That's why they sent us with a proposal. You got 3 choices, Carter. Send the woman packing, marry her proper, and make it legitimate. Or face consequences. What kind of consequences? The second rider spoke up. Kind where folks stop buying your horses, stop trading with you, make it real hard to survive out here alone. Sarah stepped forward before Daniel could respond. I'll leave. Sarah, Daniel started. No, this is my fault. I won't let you and Emma suffer because of me." Stevens grinned. "Smart woman. Knew she'd see reason." "Like hell," Daniel said. "Nobody's going anywhere." "Then you're choosing the hard way." "I'm choosing my own damn life. And if the town council has a problem with that, they can come tell me themselves instead of sending boys to do their dirty work." Stevens's expression darkened. "You're making a mistake, Carter. Won't be my first. Now get gone before I forget my manners." The riders exchanged glances, then wheeled their horses around. But before they left, Stevens called back over his shoulder. "Your wife died because she didn't know her place, Carter. Be a shame if history repeated itself." Daniel started forward, but Sarah grabbed his arm. "Don't. They're trying to provoke you. They're threatening you." "I know, but fighting them won't help." He was shaking with fury, but he let her hold him back. They watched the riders disappear into the trees. Emma pressed against Sarah's side. What did they mean about history repeating? Daniel knelt in front of his daughter. "They're just being cruel little bird. Don't pay them any mind." "But why don't they like us?" "Because some people are afraid of anything different, and fear makes them mean." Emma looked at Sarah. "Are you different?" "Yes, sweetheart. Just like you and your papa." "I like being different." Sarah managed a smile despite the fear clawing at her throat. "Me too." But as they walked back to the cabin, the rider's words echoed in her mind. "Send the woman packing. Marry her proper. Face consequences. 3 choices. None of them simple." That evening, after Emma had fallen asleep, Sarah and Daniel sat at the table in tense silence. The fire crackled, wind rattled the shutters. Everything felt fragile, like glass about to shatter. "I should go," Sarah said finally. "No. Daniel, they threatened you. Threatened your livelihood. Let them. I don't need the town's business to survive." "Yes, you do. You have Emma to think about. You can't just—" "I can and I will." He leaned forward, eyes intense. "I won't let them bully me into sending you away. I won't let them decide who belongs in my life. This isn't about pride. It's exactly about pride and principle, and not letting the same people who killed Kaya dictate my future." His voice roughened. "They took her from me once. I'll be damned if I let them take you too." Sarah's breath caught. "Daniel. Unless you want to leave, if you're done with this with us, then say so. I won't force you to stay. But don't leave because of fear. Don't let them win that way." "I'm not afraid for myself. I'm afraid for Emma. For you. And I'm afraid of waking up one morning and finding you gone. Of Emma asking where you went and not having a good answer." He reached across the table, taking her hand. "I'm afraid of losing this before we even figure out what this is." Sarah's eyes burned. "What are we doing, Daniel, really?" "I don't know. But I know I care about you. Know I want you here. Know that when I think about the future now, you're in it. That's not enough to build a life on. Isn't it Kaya and I started with less? We couldn't even speak the same language. But we had caring, had wanting, had choosing each other every day, even when it was hard. And look what happened to her." The words hung brutal and honest between them. Daniel flinched, but didn't let go of her hand. "Yeah, look what happened. She died. And it broke me. And I spent 14 months just existing, just surviving, just trying to keep Emma alive." His grip tightened. "But then you showed up. And I started living again. Started wanting again. And maybe that's dangerous. Maybe it's stupid. But I'd rather risk the pain than go back to just surviving." Tears spilled down Sarah's cheeks. "I'm scared." "So am I. What if they hurt you? Hurt Emma? What if they don't? What if we fight and we win and we build something good here? That's a lot of what ifs." "Life's nothing but what ifs, Sarah. The question is which ones you're willing to bet on. She looked at their joined hands, his weathered and scarred, hers smaller, but just as marked by hard living. Two people who'd survived things they shouldn't have survived. Two people who'd been unwanted, cast aside, told they didn't belong. Two people who'd found each other anyway. "I don't want to leave," she whispered. "Then don't." "But the town council can go straight to hell. We'll figure it out." "How?" He was quiet for a moment. "Then, we give them what they want. We make it legitimate." Sarah's heart stopped. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying we should get married, for real. Not because they're forcing us, but because it's what I want anyway." He stood still, holding her hand, pulling her to her feet. "I know it's fast. No, we barely know each other. But I also know you saved my daughter's life. Know you make her laugh. Know I look for you first thing every morning and last thing every night. And I know that's not nothing. Daniel, I'm not asking you to love me. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I'm asking you to stay. To let me protect you the only way I know how. To give Emma the mother she's already chosen. To give us a chance to figure out if this thing between us is real or just two lonely people finding comfort." Sarah's mind spun. Marriage. To a man she'd known less than a month. To a widower still grieving his first wife. To a father desperate to protect his daughter. Every rational thought screamed no. But her heart whispered yes. "I need time to think." "Take all the time you need." "But Sarah." He cupped her face gently. "Know that I'm not asking because I feel obligated. I'm asking because I want to. Because somewhere between that first day at the train station and right now you became important to me. And I don't want to lose you." He kissed her forehead, soft and brief, then stepped back. "Think about it. Whatever you decide, I'll respect it." He moved to his bedroll by the fire, giving her space. Sarah stood frozen, hand pressed to where his lips had touched her skin, feeling like the world had tilted sideways. Marriage. To Daniel Carter. To a life she'd never imagined but suddenly couldn't bear to lose. She didn't sleep that night, just lay in the dark beside Emma, turning Daniel's words over and over in her mind. By dawn she'd made her decision. She found him in the barn mucking stalls. He looked up when she entered, hope and fear warring in his expression. "I thought about it," Sarah said. "And ask me properly." Daniel set down his pitchfork slowly. He crossed to her, stopping close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. "Sarah Bennett," he said quietly, "will you marry me? Why should I? Because I'll spend every day trying to make you happy. Because I'll protect you and Emma with my life. Because I'll never take you for granted or make you feel less than whole." He paused. "And because I think maybe given time we could love each other. Really love each other. You think maybe? I'm not good with words, but I know what I feel, and I feel more for you than I thought I'd ever feel for anyone again." Sarah stepped closer. "What if I said I already love you a little bit, enough to be terrified of it?" His breath caught. "Then I'd say you're braver than I am. Or more foolish. Maybe both." She reached up, touching his rough cheek. "I'll marry you, Daniel Carter. Not because the town council says I should. Not because I'm desperate or alone. But because Emma needs a mother. And because you need someone who understands. And because I'd rather fight beside you than run away alone. That's enough. For now. We'll figure out the rest as we go." He pulled her into his arms, holding her like she was something precious and breakable. Sarah let herself lean into his strength, breathing in the scent of hay and leather and home. "When?" he asked against her hair. "Soon. Before I lose my nerve. Before the town council makes good on their threats." That too. They stood together in the barn, while outside the sun climbed higher, and Emma's voice called out, wondering where they'd gone. We should tell her, Sarah said. She's going to be impossible. She's going to be thrilled. They walked back to the cabin hand in hand. Emma sat on the porch step throwing corn to the chickens, but she looked up when they approached. Her eyes went wide. Are you holding hands? We are, Daniel confirmed. Does that mean you're getting married? Sarah knelt in front of her. Would that be all right with you? Emma threw her arms around Sarah's neck so hard they both nearly fell over. Yes. Yes, I told you you'd be my mama forever. Sarah held her close, laughing through tears. Yes, sweetheart, forever. When are you getting married? Daniel crouched beside them. Soon. Maybe next week. We'll go to town, find the Reverend, make it official. Can I wear my good dress? You can wear whatever you want, little bird. Emma pulled back, looking between them with shining eyes. This is the best day ever. Sarah met Daniel's gaze over their daughter's head. He smiled a real smile, unguarded and almost boyish. Yeah, he said softly. I think maybe it is. The next week passed in a blur of preparation. Sarah altered the one good dress she owned, adding lace from an old petticoat. Daniel rode to town to speak with Reverend Walsh, returning with news that the Reverend would perform the ceremony, despite the town council's disapproval. He said any man brave enough to love openly deserves God's blessing, Daniel reported. And any woman willing to fight for family deserves respect. He sounds like a good man. He is. One of the few left in Sweetwater. Emma helped Sarah practice braiding her hair, chattering about how beautiful the wedding would be. Her excitement was infectious, driving away some of Sarah's lingering doubts. But the night before they were meant to ride to town, those doubts came rushing back. Sarah stood on the porch, watching stars emerge in the darkening sky. Daniel joined her 2 cups of coffee in his hands. Nervous? He asked. Terrified? Me too. Really? I'm marrying a woman I've known less than a month. A woman I've never even kissed properly. A woman who could still change her mind and leave. He sipped his coffee. Yeah, I'm terrified. I won't leave. I know. But the fear doesn't care about logic. They stood in comfortable silence, shoulders touching. Daniel, After we're married, where will I sleep? The question hung between them. Wherever you want, he said finally. We can add a partition to the cabin, give you privacy, or... He trailed off. Or we can figure it out together, like everything else. Sarah's cheeks warmed. That's not much of an answer. It's the only honest one I've got. I won't push you, Sarah. Won't expect anything just because we speak vows. This marriage can be whatever we need it to be. And what do you need? He looked at her, then eyes dark and serious. I need you safe. Need Emma happy. Need to know that when I wake up tomorrow, and the next day, and the day after that, you'll still be here. That's all. For now. And later. Later maybe I'll need more. Maybe you will too. But we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Sarah nodded, understanding and grateful for his patience. I should sleep, she said. Big day tomorrow. Sarah. She turned back. Thank you, Daniel said quietly. For saying yes. For staying. For choosing us. Thank you for asking. She went inside, leaving him on the porch with his coffee and his thoughts. Tomorrow, she'd become Sarah Carter. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, she'd finally belong somewhere. And if her hands shook as she lay down to sleep, if her heart raced with equal parts fear and hope, if tears dampened her pillow well, that was between her and the darkness. Emma stirred beside her. Mama? I'm here, sweetheart. Are you happy? Sarah thought about Daniel's proposal, about his rough hands and gentle eyes, about the way he looked at Emma like she was his entire world, about how he'd offered Sarah a place in that world without asking her to be anything other than herself. Yes, she whispered. I'm happy. Good, Me too. Emma drifted back to sleep, her small hand finding Sarah's beneath the covers. And Sarah lay awake until dawn, holding her daughter's hand and trying to believe that tomorrow wouldn't end in heartbreak. But deep down in the part of her that had survived 4 rejections and 28 years of being unwanted, she knew better than to trust in happy endings. Tomorrow would bring joy or sorrow. Tomorrow would make her Sarah Carter or leave her Sarah Bennett forever. Tomorrow would either save her or break her completely. And all she could do was wait for sunrise and hope that this time, this one-time love would be enough. Dawn broke cold and clear. Sarah dressed in her altered gown with shaking hands, Emma bouncing around the cabin like an overexcited puppy. "You look beautiful, Mama, like a princess." "I look like a woman in an old dress with new lace." "Same thing," Emma insisted. Daniel appeared in the doorway, freshly shaved, wearing clothes Sarah had never seen before. Dark trousers, a pressed shirt, a vest that looked almost new. He stopped when he saw her and something flickered across his face. "You look like I'm about to make either the best or worst decision of my life. I was going to say beautiful, but that works too." They loaded into the wagon in nervous silence. The ride to town felt both endless and far too short. Emma chattered the entire way, oblivious to the tension radiating between the two adults. Sweetwater came into view, smoke rising from chimneys, people moving along the main street. Sarah's stomach clenched. "We don't have to do this," Daniel said quietly. "If you want to turn around—" "No, I'm not running anymore." He reached over, squeezed her hand once, then released it. They pulled up outside the small church at the edge of town. Reverend Walsh waited on the steps, a kind-faced man in his 60s, with white hair and gentle eyes. "Mr. Carter, Miss Bennett, and young Emma." He smiled. "Are we ready?" "As we'll ever be," Daniel said. They were halfway up the church steps when Thomas Whitmore appeared, flanked by 2 men Sarah recognized from the town council. Her heart sank. "Carter, I'm afraid I can't let you do this." Daniel's jaw tightened. "You don't have a say in it, Whitmore." "The town council does. And we've voted. The woman can't stay in Sweetwater. Not as your wife. Not as anything." "This is a house of God," Reverend Walsh said firmly. "You have no authority here." "We have authority everywhere. And if you perform this ceremony, Reverend, you'll be performing your last one in this town." Emma pressed against Sarah's side. Sarah wrapped an arm around her, fighting the urge to run. "Why?" Daniel's voice was dangerously quiet. "Why does it matter so damn much what I do, who I marry, how I raise my daughter?" Whitmore's lip curled. "Because you flaunt your choices in our faces. First the Apache woman, now this half-breed. You show our children that mixing blood is acceptable, that defying God's natural order is something to celebrate." "God's natural order?" Daniel laughed bitterly. "You don't know a damn thing about God. I know he doesn't approve of—" "You know what, I don't care." Daniel stepped forward, and Whitmore actually backed up. "I don't care what you approve of. Don't care what the town council thinks. Don't care if you run me out of business or burn down my cabin or do whatever the hell else you're threatening. I'm marrying this woman, today, now, and there's not a damn thing you can do to stop me." "Daniel," Sarah started. "No." He turned to her. "I'm done letting them win. Done letting fear make my choices. Kaya died because I wasn't there to protect her. But I'm here now, and I'll be damned if I let them take you too." Whitmore's face reddened. "You're making a mistake." "The only mistake I made was caring what people like you think." Daniel took Sarah's hand. "Reverend Walsh, if you're still willing, I'd like to marry this woman." The Reverend smiled. "Nothing would give me greater pleasure." They turned toward the church, but Whitmore grabbed Daniel's arm. "You take one more step, Carter, and I'll make sure you never sell another horse in this territory. I'll spread word that you're harboring criminals. I'll have the law come sniffing around your property looking for violations. I'll make your life hell." Daniel pulled his arm free. You already did that when you let Kaya die. Nothing you do now can hurt worse than that. He led Sarah up the steps. Emma followed, and Reverend Walsh ushered them inside. The church was small and cold sunlight filtering through simple windows. No flowers, no music, no guests, just the four of them and God. This isn't how I imagined my wedding, Sarah whispered. Me neither. Daniel managed a small smile. Better or worse? Ask me after. Reverend Walsh took his place at the simple altar. Shall we begin? They stood facing each other, hands joined, while Emma bounced excitedly beside them, and the Reverend opened his worn Bible. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here in the sight of God to join this man and this woman in holy matrimony. Marriage is not to be entered into, lightly but reverently soberly, and in the knowledge that love is the greatest of all gifts. Sarah's hands trembled. Daniel's grip steadied them. Do you, Daniel Carter, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part? I do. His voice was clear and certain. And do you, Sarah Bennett, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part? Sarah looked at Daniel, really looked at him, saw the fear he was trying to hide, saw the hope he was trying not to feel, saw a man who'd lost everything and was somehow brave enough to try again. I do. Then by the power vested in me by God and the territory of Montana, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Reverend Walsh smiled. You may kiss your bride. Daniel hesitated. They hadn't discussed this part. Sarah made the decision for both of them. She rose on her toes and pressed her lips to his brief, chaste but real. When she pulled back, his eyes were dark and unreadable. Hello, husband, she whispered. Hello, wife. Emma shrieked with joy, throwing her arms around both of them. You did it. You're married. You're really married. Reverend Walsh chuckled. Congratulations to all three of you. May God bless your family. They signed the marriage certificate. Daniel's handwriting rough but legible. Sarah's surprisingly elegant, despite her shaking hands. Emma insisted on signing too, her name a crooked scrawl at the bottom. There, Daniel said, straightening. It's done, legal and binding. No going back now, Sarah agreed. Would you want to? She thought about Thomas Whitmore waiting outside, about the town council's threats, about everything that could still go wrong. No, she said honestly. I wouldn't. They stepped out of the church together. Whitmore still waited, arms crossed, jaw tight with fury. You're fools, he spat. Both of you. Maybe, Daniel said. But we're married fools, and that's all that matters. He helped Sarah into the wagon, lifted Emma up, then climbed onto the driver's seat. Before snapping the reins, he looked at Whitmore one last time. You know what the difference is between you and me? I loved a woman the world said I shouldn't love, and when she died, I found the courage to love again. You're so busy hating people for being different that you'll never know what love actually feels like. He paused. I pity you. They rode out of town in silence, Whitmore's shouted threats fading behind them. Emma fell asleep against Sarah's shoulder halfway home. Sarah stroked her hair absently, watching the landscape roll past. You all right? Daniel asked. I just married a man I barely know, defied a town council, and made enemies I can't afford. How do you think I am? Honestly, I have no idea. She laughed despite herself. Me neither. They pulled up to the cabin as afternoon shadows lengthened. Daniel carried Emma inside and laid her on the bed without waking her. Sarah stood in the doorway, suddenly uncertain. This was her home now, her family, her life. Sarah. She turned. Daniel stood by the fire, still in his wedding clothes, looking as lost as she felt. What happens now? She asked. I don't know. I've never done this before. Not like this. You were married before. That was different. Kaya and I knew we loved each other. This, he gestured between them. This is messier, complicated. Are you regretting it already? No. Are you? I don't think so, but I'm terrified. Of what? Sarah moved closer. Of wanting this too much. Of letting myself believe it's real. Of waking up one day and finding out it was all a mistake. Daniel closed the distance between them. He cupped her face gently, thumbs brushing her cheekbones. It's real, Sarah. Maybe it's not perfect. Maybe it's not what either of us imagined. But it's real. How do you know? Because I'm scared too, and I don't get scared unless something matters. She leaned into his touch, letting her eyes close. What do we do now? We figure it out, one day at a time. That's simple. Nothing about this is simple. But we keep showing up, keep choosing each other, keep trying. Sarah opened her eyes. I can do that. Yeah. He kissed her, then longer than in the church, deeper, with more promise. Sarah kissed him back, tasting coffee and hope, and the beginning of something neither of them fully understood yet. When they broke apart, both breathing harder, Daniel rested his forehead against hers. Welcome home, Mrs. Carter. Thank you, Mr. Carter. Emma stirred on the bed, yawned, sat up, rubbing her eyes. Are you kissing? Sarah's cheeks flamed. We're married now, sweetheart. Married people kiss. Good. Papa needs more kissing. He's been too serious for too long. Daniel laughed, the sound rusty but genuine. Well, I've got a wife now. Maybe she'll help with that. I'll do my best, Sarah said dryly. They spent the evening like any other, making supper, cleaning up Emma, chattering about the wedding. But everything felt different now. Every brush of hands, every shared glance, every moment of comfortable silence. After Emma went to bed, Sarah and Daniel sat by the fire. Neither spoke for a long time. I should tell you something, Daniel said finally. Sarah's stomach clenched. What? When Kaya died, I promised myself I'd never let anyone that close again, never give someone the power to destroy me the way her death did. He stared into the flames. But then you showed up, and Emma loved you, and I started thinking maybe it was possible to love again, to risk again. And now I'm realizing I already love you. Just a little, enough to be terrified of losing you. Sarah's breath caught. Daniel, I know it's too soon. Know you might not feel the same. But I needed you to know that this isn't just practical for me. Isn't just about giving Emma a mother or protecting you from the town council. This is about me wanting a life with you. Tears blurred Sarah's vision. I love you too. I think I started loving you the day you offered me shelter. When you could have left me in the cold, but chose kindness instead. He turned to face her fully. Yeah. So what now? Now we live. We love. We fight for this family. She took his hand. And we don't let fear win. No more running. No more running. He pulled her into his arms, holding her like she was something precious he'd thought he'd lost forever. Sarah held him back just as tightly, feeling the steady beat of his heart against her cheek. They stayed like that until the fire burned low, neither wanting to break the spell of this moment. Finally, Daniel pulled back. It's late. You should sleep. Wherever you want. Sarah looked at the narrow bed where Emma slept, then at Daniel's bedroll by the fire, then back at him. I want to sleep beside my husband, she said quietly. Something flared in his eyes. You sure? I'm sure. They moved Emma gently to one side, giving them room. Sarah lay down still in her wedding dress, suddenly shy. Daniel settled beside her, leaving space between them. "Good night, Sarah." "Good night, Daniel." But neither slept. They lay in the dark, acutely aware of each other until Sarah finally rolled over and rested her head on his chest. His arm came around her immediately. "Better," he murmured. "Much." "Sarah." Thank you. For saying yes. For staying. For all of it." "Thank you for asking." They drifted off together, three people who'd been broken separately, now healing together, one day at a time. Winter deepened over the next weeks. Snow piled higher. Temperatures dropped. But inside the cabin, warmth grew. Sarah learned Daniel's rhythms, the way he woke before dawn, how he checked Emma's forehead every morning out of habit, the small smile he tried to hide when Sarah sang while cooking. Daniel learned Sarah's the nightmares that woke her gasping, the way she touched her wedding ring like a talisman, how she needed Emma's laughter, the way other people needed air. Emma learned both of them, how Papa's shoulders relaxed when Mama was near, how Mama's face lit up when Papa smiled, how they were building something new from broken pieces. One night, 6 weeks after the wedding, Sarah woke to find Daniel sitting by the window. "Can't sleep?" she asked softly. "Thinking. About how different things are now. How different I am." Sarah wrapped a shawl around her shoulders and joined him. "Different how?" "Kaya's been gone 14 months. For most of that time I just existed, went through motions, kept Emma alive but didn't really live." He looked at Sarah. "Then you showed up, and suddenly I wanted things again. Morning coffee with someone who understands. Emma's laughter, a future that doesn't ache." "Is that bad?" "No, but it feels disloyal somehow, like I'm betraying Kaya's memory by being happy." Sarah took his hand. "Kaya would want you happy, would want Emma happy. Love doesn't demand endless grief, Daniel. It asks us to keep living." "How do you know?" "Because that's what my mother would have wanted for me. To live fully, love deeply, not spend my life apologizing for existing." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "You're wiser than you look." "Is that a compliment?" "The best one I've got at 2 in the morning." She laughed softly, and he pulled her close. "I'm glad you stayed," he whispered against her hair. "I'm glad you asked." Spring came, slowly melting snow, revealing brown earth and the first brave shoots of green. Emma celebrated her 5th birthday with a cake Sarah baked and a carved horse Daniel made. The child ran circles around the cabin, shrieking with joy. "Best birthday ever," she announced, "because I have a mama and a papa." Sarah and Daniel exchanged glances across the table, both thinking the same thing, how close they'd come to never having this. In late April, Sarah realized she'd missed her monthly bleeding. She said nothing for 2 weeks, afraid to hope. But when the nausea started, she couldn't hide it anymore. Daniel found her retching behind the cabin one morning. "Sarah." She wiped her mouth, embarrassed. "I'm fine, just something I ate." "You're pregnant." It wasn't a question. "I think so. Yes." He stared at her expression, unreadable. Sarah's stomach churned, and not from morning sickness. "Say something," she whispered. "I'm going to be a father again." "You're already a father." "You know what I mean." He crossed to her, pulled her upright, searched her face. "Are you all right?" "Scared, happy." "All of it. Everything all at once." A smile broke across his face, slow and genuine and filled with wonder. "We're having a baby. We're having a baby." He kissed her, then deep, and claiming one hand splayed protectively over her still flat stomach. Emma found them like that and immediately understood. "Am I getting a brother or sister?" "One or the other, little bird." "Finally, I've been waiting forever." Sarah laughed through happy tears. "You've known us 5 months." "That's forever when you're 5. The baby came in January, a boy with dark hair and his father's eyes. They named him James after Daniel's father, with the middle name Dakota Lakota, for friend to everyone. Emma held her brother with careful reverence, whispering promises to always protect him. Sarah watched her family, her husband, her daughter, her son, and felt something settle deep in her chest. Something that had been restless and aching her entire life, finally going quiet. "You all right?" Daniel asked, sitting beside her on the bed. "I'm home," she said simply. "Yeah, you are." That summer, the town council sent word that they were revoking their sanctions. Reverend Walsh had led a campaign reminding people that Christian charity meant accepting all of God's children. It hadn't changed everyone's minds, but enough people had softened that Sarah could walk through Sweetwater without whispers following. Some people still crossed the street, some still muttered, but some slowly, carefully started nodding hello. Emma made friends with the blacksmith's daughter. Daniel's horse business grew. Sarah started teaching children their letters on sunny afternoons. They built a life, not perfect, not without struggle, but theirs. One evening, 2 years after that first day at the train station, Sarah stood on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky orange and gold. Emma chased fireflies in the meadow. James toddled after her on unsteady legs. Daniel chopped wood for the winter, the steady rhythm of the axe a familiar comfort. "Mama," Emma called. "Come catch fireflies with us." Sarah smiled. "I'm coming." She stepped off the porch, Daniel catching her hand as she passed. "Hey. Hey yourself. You happy?" "Ridiculously so." "Good." He kissed her knuckles. "Me too." She joined her children in the meadow, all 3 of them laughing as fireflies danced around them like tiny stars. Daniel watched from the porch, his family whole and safe, and sent up a silent thank you to the wife he'd lost and the wife he'd found. Both had taught him the same lesson: love wasn't about perfection. It was about showing up, about choosing each other, about fighting for belonging even when the world said you didn't deserve it. Sarah caught a firefly in her cupped hands, showed it to James, then released it back into the twilight. Just like her caught, treasured, then set free to shine. She was no longer the mail-order bride no one wanted. She was Sarah Carter. Wife, mother, teacher, fighter. She was home. She was loved. She was enough. And nothing, not the past, not prejudice, not fear, could take that away. Because she'd finally learned the most important truth. You don't need everyone to choose you. You just need the right people to choose you back.